Hi, welcome to Not Crash Course on YouTube because of copyright issues. I'm your host, Jaron Mogstad, and today we'll be talking about paper. Before we get started, take a look at the world around you. Look at the walls of the room you're in. Look at the floor, the tables around you, even the ceiling. No doubt at some point you'll find paper somewhere around you. Maybe it's a sign telling you what's for lunch that day. Or maybe it's a calendar telling you what day of the week it is. Or maybe it's simply just a book. No matter what form you see, it's undeniable that paper is ingrained in our lives today, and it would be next to impossible to imagine what our lives would be like without paper. Paper has caused many changes in our world, many of which can be classified as changes of power. Throughout history, whoever has had control over paper has had some kind of power, whether it be knowledge and learning or political and economic control. To understand the power that paper can give to a civilization, we have to trace it all the way back to its origin. Paper's effect on the world first began in 150 CE in China due to its invention by Tsai Lun. He was an official of the imperial court of the Han Dynasty, the dynasty in power at the time. Tsai Lun first made paper by beating the bark of a mulberry tree into pulp and then pounding the fibers into a sheet. Over time, he learned that by adding hemp pulp and fibers from old fishing nets, the product was stronger and more pliable. The benefits of the new material were immediately apparent. Early paper was overwhelmingly more useful than the materials of the current day. Before paper, most scholars wrote things down on one of two materials. A sort of papyrus made from strips of bamboo, which was much too time-consuming to manufacture, and silk, which was way too expensive. To make matters worse, neither material held ink very well. Paper's durability, flexibility, easier manufacturing, and ability to hold ink made it infinitely more useful than its contemporaries. Because of its clear usefulness, Tsai Lun reported his new invention to the emperor of the time, Hou Di, and he was very pleased and impressed. This caused paper to spread throughout China. Considering how much of a presence paper has in our world today, it's pretty obvious that it didn't stay in China. In 751 CE, after a siege in China, the material and its recipe reached the Abbasid Caliphate, which was the empire in the Middle East at the time. The introduction of paper into this culture had one massive effect on the output of writings, for one particular reason. Now anyone could make money off of being a writer. This caused more and more people to be scholars, spurring on an age of enlightenment in the Abbasid Caliphate, later known as the Golden Age. This period gets its name due to the vast number of discoveries made in this 500-year period, compared not only to periods in Islamic history, but to history of the entire world. Knowledge constantly being expanded upon by the Abbasids gave them great power, to the point where their discoveries are still extremely prominent in our world today. Many of the discoveries of the Golden Age were based around taking ancient Greek and Roman manuscripts written on fragile parchment that outlined some of the greatest discoveries of the era in areas such as mathematics, science, medicine, and literature, and using the ancient world's new favorite material, picking up where they left off. One area of academics largely expanded upon by this act of building upon the ancient knowledge was mathematics. One scholar in particular, a Persian mathematician by the name of Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi, discovered the basics of algebra from basic arithmetic and wrote it down in a book. The research in this book, made of paper, was later expanded upon during the European Renaissance, creating the world of mathematics as we know it today. Another realm of knowledge that the Abbasids built upon during the Golden Age as a direct result of paper was medicine. As was the trademark of the Golden Age, much of Abbasid medical research was based on expanding upon the research done by other ancient scholars, using translations of classic works as a basis for their research. One particularly influential scholar of the time was a man named Avicenna, sometimes referred to as the father of early medicine or the prince of physicians. What Avicenna is probably most well known for is his book of medical discoveries called The Canon of Medicine, which was not only present in every medical library in Europe for centuries, but was also used as the final medical authority on European doctors for just as long. This highly influential writing of Avicenna's would not have been possible without the invention and spread of paper. The way the power of paper presents itself in the Islamic Golden Age is in the knowledge that it gave the entire world through the discoveries of Abbasid scholars. The impact of discoveries by the greats such as Avicenna and Al-Khwarizmi have lived on so much longer after the fall of the Abbasid Caliphate and still present themselves today, proving just how much power the Abbasids had when it came to knowledge. Paper continued to spread throughout the world and eventually, albeit much later, reached Europe. The material first came to Spain due to trading through the Silk Road, but didn't reach the rest of Europe until the Crusades, when many Islamic countries that were already producing and reaping the benefits of paper were raided. Interestingly, paper was not quite as useful to Europe when it first arrived, which makes sense if you think about it. At the time, most of the continent was just coming out of the Dark Ages, leaving most of the population illiterate. Because only the very elite could read and write, there just simply wasn't much need for paper. Germany was one of the last regions that paper spread to, but by far one of the most important. In the 1440s, just a few decades after the arrival of paper in Germany, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, which proved to have a massive effect on enlightenment and innovation in Europe. Gutenberg's invention made it possible to quickly produce all kinds of books, making literature more affordable and easy to access. This access to literature caused a rise in Europe's general literacy rate, which caused a rise in scholars and new discoveries, eventually leading into the greatest era of enlightenment in Europe, the Renaissance. When considering the connection between paper and the age of European enlightenment, this idea of power from knowledge comes forward again. Today, we still consider the scientific, mathematical, and artistic discoveries of the Renaissance as some of the greatest and most influential of all time, showing just how powerful of a material paper is. When we examine the historical significance of paper, it no longer seems like the material that we so often take for granted, but instead like a catalyst for innovation and enlightenment. The history of paper proves once and for all that knowledge is power. Thank you for watching.